Today I'm going to take a look at 1 Nephi 11. It's part of the Apocalypse of Nephi, which is 1 Nephi 11 to 14. I've divided it into a number of sections, and basically the first chapter 11 is about the ministry of Christ and the apostles. And so each chapter kind of has a different theme, a different focus, all of which combine together to give this apocalyptic view of history that Nephi had. His vision begins with a desire to know what his father had seen. Now, this is a common trait of Nephi, that he doesn't just accept his father's words, but he wants to have his own visions. And he is described as pondering in his heart, which is an idiom, a biblical idiom, which means basically to think deeply and profoundly. Remember, the heart is the center of cognition in Hebrew thought. And so you examine, open up, dig through, assess, things like that. The idea of pondering also appears in the Greek New Testament as symbolo, which means to throw together. And our term symbol comes from this. So in a sense, pondering means considering and comparing symbols in its broader sense. So anyway, Nephi is pondering these issues. He's thinking deeply about them. And notice he's not seeking specifically to understand the Messiah. He's seeking to understand Lehi's earlier visions, part of which is the Messiah. But we'll see this vision of Nephi turns into a messianic vision, which gives much more detail on the Messiah than did the earlier. Now, Nephi, as he's pondering these things, he is caught away by the Spirit of the Lord. This phrase occurs several times in the Book of Mormon and also in the Book of Moses. And I've listed the references there. And the idea is to be almost like being kidnapped or seized by God. When you have a vision, you're overwhelmed by God, you're grasped by him, you're taken away by him. It probably may refer to a visionary transportation to a different place, because you'll notice Nephi goes to a mountain that he'd never seen before. We don't know if he's physically moved there, or I suspect it's just a visionary ascent onto this mountain. Anyway, the idea of being snatched away by God in a vision occurs in the New Testament several places. I've listed them there. Also notice that 1 Nephi 11:1 here, being caught away by the Spirit of the Lord into an exceedingly high mountain, closely parallels the language of Revelation 21:10, where John is carried away in the Spirit to a great and high mountain. And this is part of the phenomenon we see in Nephi's apocalypse of relating what Nephi sees to John's book of Revelation. Now, this is made explicit at the end of the apocalypse in chapter 14, 18 to 27. And I'll talk about it a bit more when we come to those verses. But here, it's worth noting that there is a strong Johannine theme, or kind of a set of ideas that interrelate here with what Nephi's seeing in his vision. Now, he's taken up to a high mountain that he'd never seen before, and notice that this is part of what is called a mountain theophany. Again, this is something that non-LDS scholars come up with, and Nephi's apocalypse here is a classic mountain theophany. I've listed several different mountain theophanies we see in the Bible. For example, Exodus 3 on Sinai, Revelation 21:10 is John's being taken up to a high mountain. The Mount of Temptation, and most notably the Mount of Transfiguration in Matthew 17:1 and its parallels. Now, the mountain theophany idea is probably related to the idea of the cosmic mountain where God dwells, and this is found in biblical text in Ezekiel that I've listed the verses there, so you can take a look at that. It's probably also related to the idea of Moses on Sinai. Remember, one theme of the book of Nephi is that Nephi is the new Moses for the new Israel, which are going to a new promised land, crossing the waters, the great waters, rather than the Red Sea, but the net result is the same. They go to a new promised land and have a new covenant, build a new temple. I mean, there's a close parallel here. So Nephi as Moses, that theme or motif is expanded here with Nephi on this high mountain, which is essentially Nephi's Sinai in a very real sense. Notice also that the Garden of Eden is on a mountain, according to Ezekiel there, and God dwells on a mountain in Psalms and so forth. There are, in fact, 4 mountains mentioned in Israelite tradition as being cosmic mountains. There's the Mountain of Eden, the Mountain of Sinai, the Mount Zion, which is the Temple Mount, and the Mountain of the East, which, I mean, that's the only word we got, and that comes from Jubilees 4:26. And I've listed some bibliography on the idea of cosmic mountain here. So this is a very important ancient Near Eastern motif that pops up here in the Book of Mormon. So Nephi now, his vision begins once he's on the top of this high mountain, and there's a figure that he calls the Spirit, which is with him. We'll discuss who this Spirit is in a little bit later when the issue becomes more clear. But at this point, Nephi and the Spirit have a dialogue or a discussion about things. And I've put the words of the Spirit in purple text there. So the Spirit simply asks him, what do you want? And going back to the previous verse, he wants to know the things his father saw, which essentially encompasses 3 different visions in the early chapters of 1st Nephi. There's the vision of the fall of Jerusalem in Nephi 1. There is the vision of the tree of life in chapter 8 and the vision of the Messiah in chapter 10. So notice that these chapters are expanded upon in Nephi's apocalypse. We get a lot more detail. And so you know, the whole apocalypse of 11 through 14 is in fact the answer to Nephi's request to understand what his father saw. And that's exactly what happens. It's building on those 3 visions of the earlier chapters. Then the Spirit asks kind of a strange question. Do you believe that your father saw the tree? In other words, he's questioning him of how much he believes his father. And Nephi, of course, does believe his father. And so he says, yeah, I believe all the words of my father. Now, this is an interesting way of responding. He doesn't say, yes, I believe the tree. I believe everything my father said. And that leads to the implication that he believes in Lehi's prophecy of the Messiah, which occurs in chapter 10 there. And that allows then the Spirit to rejoice because Nephi believes in the Messiah. And here we've got then in verse 6 a kind of doxology that the Spirit shouts out. Hosanna to the Lord, the Most High God, who is God over all the earth and God over all above, that is, the heavens. And then he blesses Nephi because he believes in the Son of the Most High God. And because he believes in the Son, therefore, he can have this vision. So this particular verse here includes a number of Near Eastern motifs that are kind of interesting. First, the word Hosanna occurs in the New Testament, but it's based on Psalm 18:25, and it means basically save us. Hosanna. And it's a liturgical cry that the Jews used of rejoicing, you know, the Lord save us, that type of thing. And so, you know, the angel, or the Spirit rather, says this at this point, rejoicing because God has saved Nephi in a sense. His faith here means that he has been saved. And so, you know, God saves us is what they're shouting out here. Now, the word Lord occurs here in this verse. You can see that in Hosanna to the Lord. There's a problem in the Book of Mormon in this regard, because in the King James Bible, when you see the word Lord in all small capital letters, it means Yahweh, which is translated as the Lord consistently, but it is in fact a personal name. And I've listed the Hebrew spelling there and so forth. In the King James Version, there is a distinction between the word Lord as master or, leader or something like that, which is Adonai in Hebrew, and Lord as Yahweh, which is this personal name. That distinction is made by having Yahweh Lord as in small caps. Now, that distinction is not made in the Book of Mormon, so it's sometimes uncertain whether they're talking about the personal name Yahweh or just a more generic word of Lord or Master. And so you basically have to guess, and my suspicion is in this case it is talking about Yahweh. So when they say Hosanna to the Lord, it is Yahweh saves us, or Yahweh has, save us, O Yahweh, something like that. So that you'll see that the personal name occurs frequently. That is, the personal name Yahweh occurs frequently in the Book of Mormon, but it is masked by the word Lord, which is following King James tradition, of course. We do see Yahweh pop up a couple of times as Jehovah, which is the anglicized version of this Hebrew name, and we'll talk about that when that comes. They also have another very important biblical title here. Yahweh is the Most High God, according to this passage, and that is El Elyon in Hebrew, and it means basically exalted, the exalted God, and it's in part a title, and in part it's kind of a name. Melchizedek in Genesis is called the priest of El Elyon, or the Most High God, and more frequently they just say Elyon, which means just the highest one, the most exalted one, the most elevated one, that type of thing. And it occurs numerous times in the Old Testament as a title for God. So the Most High here is a good archaic Hebrew name for God. Notice, however, that he's also called the God over all the earth and all above, which is essentially a different way to say the God of heaven and earth, which is another very good Hebrew title for the name of God. So you can see the Spirit here is using all of these standard Old Testament phrases for his doxology, praising God in this sense. Now we also have in this chapter 11, we have a number of passages that were edited in the 1837 edition. So we have some variant readings here. And you can see that when I've, in the original text, Most High God just simply said the Most High. So he's the Son of the Most High. And that's Elyon. I mean, that's a standard way to say it in the Bible. So God was added in later on, and it's not quite clear whether, this was something that was a clarification or something that was a problem in the transcription and so forth. But at any rate, they praise, the Spirit praises Nephi and blesses Nephi because he believes in the Son of the Most High God. Now, this is a standard title for Jesus in the New Testament. It's the Son of the Most High is Huios Theo Hupisto, which means God Most High. I mean, Theos Hupistos means God Most High. That's the standard way the phrase El Elyon is translated in the Old Testament. And the Son of the Highest, without God, that is, instead of the Son of the God Most High, it's the Son of the Highest, or the Son of the Most High. That also occurs in Luke. All of this phraseology is based on Psalm 82:6, where God says, "Ye are gods," that is the lesser gods here, the angels, "and all of you are sons of the Most High." So the idea that the Most High has a son existed in ancient Israel, and it's linked in with these ideas here. So believing in the Son of the Most High is a good Hebrew way of describing the Messiah, who is considered the Son of God and the King, the divine King in ancient Hebrew literature. And I've given you some references to that before. Then we come to verse 7, where the angel, or rather the Spirit, continues his discussion, and basically he says, I'm going to give you a sign of a man descending out of heaven, and Nephi is commanded to bear record of that it's the Son of God. So in other words, he's given this vision. The vision is a sign. What he is to behold is a man descending out of heaven, and he has to bear witness of it. Now, the sign idea, this is ot in Hebrew. It means a sign, a mark, a token, and it's used for many different things, but in a religious context, it's a token or a mark or a sign of a prophecy or a covenant. And I've given you a number of passages in the Old Testament there where the idea of God giving a prophetic revelation as a sign or an ot is found. And I've listed the passages there. You can go take a look at those if you want. Now, the idea of the man descending out of heaven is based on 1 Nephi 1:9, where Lehi's first vision shows a man descending out of heaven and 12 others descending with him. And then this culminates in 3 Nephi 11:9, where Christ descends out of heaven to the Nephites. Now notice, Christ is not described as descending out of heaven in the New Testament very much. We have John 1:51, where that idea is referenced. But from the Nephite perspective, that's exactly what Christ does. He descends out of heaven when they encounter him in 3 Nephi 11:9. So that prophecy of Christ descending out of heaven is a Nephite conception, because that's how they're going to first encounter him. And then the bearing record is essentially a command for Nephi to write down his testimony of Jesus, and you see this both in these chapters 11 through 14, but also then throughout 1st and 2nd Nephi, where Nephi continually talks about Christ. So we have then the beginning of this vision, where the Spirit asks Nephi what he wants, commends and blesses Nephi for his belief in the Son of God, and then promises him a prophetic sign of a man descending out of heaven, which Nephi needs to bear record of. And so this sets the whole context, and then beginning in verse 8, we see the actual vision beginning.